There is a civilization that has existed for over 3,500 years, survived Egyptian slavery, Babylonian exile, Roman conquest, the Inquisition, 2 world wars, and the Holocaust, and they are still here, still sharp, still fertile, still living longer than most nations on Earth. And for most of that time, they had no pharmaceutical industry, no synthetic drugs, no hospital system as we know it today. What they had was a garden. 7 specific plants, documented in their sacred texts, prescribed by their physicians, grown in their courtyards, and passed down through an unbroken chain of written knowledge, stretching back further than any medical tradition in the Western world. The Babylonian Talmud contains close to 400 plant names with precise clinical instructions. Dosages, preparations, targeted conditions. These were not witch doctors guessing. These were scholars, physicians, observers who wrote everything down. In 2023, researchers at NIH confirmed that one of these 7 plants contains a compound that selectively kills cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue completely untouched. Some pharmaceutical companies have spent billions trying to engineer in a lab. It has been growing in Hebrew gardens for 3,000 years. Another plant prescribed by the physician Maimonides in the 12th century for heart conditions was clinically proven in 2024 to lower arterial blood pressure through the exact biological mechanism modern cardiologists now target with prescription drugs. Except this one is free, and a third, the one King Hezekiah pressed into a poultice to heal a fatal infection in 700 BC, contains a proteolytic enzyme that breaks down infected tissue at the cellular level, the kind of precision modern wound care specialists consider cutting edge. The ancient Hebrews were not lucky. They were meticulous. They had a system. Today you are going to learn it plant by plant, compound by compound, and exactly what each one does to your body. These 7 plants are not folklore, not alternative medicine, not fringe. They are the 7 species: wheat, barley, the grapevine, the fig, the pomegranate, the olive, and the date palm, first documented in the book of Deuteronomy as the defining plants of the Promised Land, chosen not just for symbolism, but because ancient Hebrew society understood something. Modern nutritional science is only now formally confirming. These plants were the infrastructure of human health. Alongside them, Hebrew physicians cultivated targeted medicinal plants, hyssop, garlic, black cumin, saffron, each prescribed in the Talmud with the precision of a clinical manual. The Mishnah, the Talmud, the writings of Maimonides, thousands of years of documented clinical observation, written, debated, refined, and preserved, while the rest of the world passed remedies by word of mouth. This is the oldest peer-reviewed medical literature on Earth. Welcome to Nature's Heal. If this knowledge matters to you, subscribe now and hit the bell. Every share gets this into the hands of someone who needs it. Now let's open the garden. Archaeologists excavating the Neolithic settlement of Gilgal pull something extraordinary from the soil. Figs. Not wild figs, domesticated figs. Parthenocarpy varieties that cannot reproduce without human intervention. Someone consciously chose to plant them, tend them, save them. This is the oldest evidence of deliberate agriculture ever discovered on Earth, and it begins with one of the 7 Hebrew medicinal plants. Before wheat, before barley, before the grapevine, the fig came first. But the Hebrews did not just inherit botanical knowledge, they did something no civilization before them had done at the same scale. They wrote it all down. By 1500 BC, Hebrew agricultural law, encoded in the Torah, was already regulating how land was farmed, how long soil rested between harvests, the sabbatical year, and which plants were to be preserved across generations. This was not religion decorating agriculture. This was agriculture encoded into law, so it could never be forgotten. The Greek physician Discords arrived in 90 AD and documented what he found. Olive leaf infusions for fever, fig latex on infected lesions, pomegranate root bark boiled to expel intestinal parasites, hyssop inhaled to clear the lungs. He called these practices ancient even then. By the 12th century, Maimonides was writing detailed medical guides, prescribing fig for chronic constipation, garlic for cardiovascular protection, and black cumin for respiratory conditions. His medical writings were studied in European universities for 400 years after his death. But the most striking proof of Hebrew botanical precision is a single verse in the Old Testament, 2 Kings, chapter 20. King Hezekiah is dying. The prophet Isaiah gives one instruction, not a prayer, not a ritual. Take a fig poultice and apply it to the boil. Hezekiah recovers. Modern pharmacology now knows why. Fig latex contains physin, a proteolytic enzyme that hydrolyzes infected and necrotic tissue at the cellular level, digesting the dead tissue that traps bacterial infection. A 700 BC prescription, validated by 21st century biochemistry. This is the pattern repeated across all 7 plants, not luck, not a coincidence. A civilization paying close attention for a very long time, building a body of botanical knowledge so precise that modern researchers are still mining it. For leads on compounds, no pharmaceutical process has yet been able to replicate. The garden was their laboratory, and what they grew in it changed everything we thought we knew about where medicine came from. Now, here is where it gets extraordinary. Modern biochemistry did not validate Hebrew plant medicine in a vague, general way. It got specific, compound by compound, and the numbers stopped scientists cold. The fig's fumaric and quinine acids bind directly to the COX-2 enzyme, the same inflammatory pathway targeted by prescription drugs like ibuprofen and celecoxib. The fig does it without the side effects. The olive leaf contains oleuropein at concentrations up to 14% in dry extract. Oleuropein and its metabolite hydroxytyrosol do 2 things cardiologists spend careers trying to achieve pharmacologically. They stimulate endothelial nitric oxide synthase, triggering vasodilation of coronary blood vessels and lowering arterial blood pressure. And they inhibit the oxidation of LDL cholesterol, stopping arterial plaque before it starts. A randomized double-blind clinical trial, published in 2025, confirmed that olive leaf syrup significantly reduced kidney damage in type 2 diabetic patients. Maimonides prescribed olive leaf for heart conditions in 1190 AD. The clinical trial caught up in 2025. Here is where it gets strange. Researchers at the Technion Israel Institute of Technology discovered that pomegranate and date palm consumed together do not just add their benefits. They multiply them. Pomegranate's punicollagens activate PON1, your body's primary enzyme defense against arterial plaque. The date's phenolic glycosides attack oxidized LDL through a completely separate pathway. 2 mechanisms. 1 compounding cardiovascular defense. Half a glass of pomegranate juice and 3 dates daily together delivered protection that neither food produced alone. Pomegranate root bark also contains pellitorin, an alkaloid that selectively paralyzes the muscular system of tapeworms. Not harmful to humans, lethal to parasites. The Talmud prescribed this centuries before the mechanism was understood. Resveratrol in red grape skins reduces platelet aggregation and reinforces capillary walls. But residue analysis of ancient Hebrew wine vessels revealed something deeper. Wine was systematically compounded with resins, cedar oil, and juniper, a pharmaceutical delivery system. Ethanol dissolving lipid-soluble antimicrobials into the body. Used as both internal anesthetic and external wound antiseptic nearly 3,000 years before germ theory. Barley's beta-glucans form a viscous gel in the gut that simultaneously flattens blood sugar spikes and binds bile acids, forcing the liver to extract LDL from the bloodstream to synthesize new bile, mechanically lowering cholesterol. No pharmaceutical compound required. Wheat germ delivers alpha-tocopherol vitamin E that sits inside cell membranes and neutralizes free radicals before they reach DNA. The bran sweeps the colon, reducing contact time between carcinogens and the intestinal wall. 7 plants, 7 distinct biochemical mechanisms, 7 body systems protected, not one requiring a prescription. So why does almost nobody in the modern world know about this? The answer is not accidental. It came in 3 deliberate waves. The severance of food from medicine. For most of human history, the Hebrew physician did not separate what you ate from what you were treated with. The garden was the pharmacy. That changed in the late 19th century, not because science proved the separation correct, but because industry required it. You cannot patent a fig tree. You cannot own a pomegranate. You cannot charge a recurring fee for an olive tree that lives 500 years. So synthetic pharmacology systematically removed plant medicine from medical curricula. The 1910 Flexner Report, funded by the Carnegie and Rockefeller Foundations, both with significant interests in the emerging pharmaceutical industry, evaluated American medical schools. Schools teaching botanical medicine were rated poorly and forced to close. Within 2 decades, 3,000 years of documented clinical knowledge was reclassified as unscientific, not because it failed testing, because it was never tested by the new system standards. The industrialization of food, post-war agricultural policy reorganized food around monoculture. Wheat became refined white flour stripped of its germ and bran, the two components containing virtually all its medicinal value. Barley disappeared from the human diet almost entirely. The pomegranate nearly vanished from Western markets until researchers started publishing cardiovascular data in the early 2000s, and juice companies suddenly found it commercially interesting. The science arrived. Then the profit motive arrived. The plant did not change. Regulatory redefinition. The FDA's definition of a drug means that the moment a food is shown to treat disease, it cannot be marketed as a food. In other words, the more science proved these plants worked, the harder it became to tell people they worked. 3,000 years of knowledge, severed in less than a century, not disproven, just reclassified. The global pharmaceutical industry generates $1.6 trillion annually. The synthetic fertilizer industry generates $230 billion. The processed food industry generates $9 trillion. Every one of those industries depends on one thing: that you never learn to grow your medicine from a garden that costs nothing to maintain. You cannot patent an olive tree. You cannot own punicalagens. You cannot build a subscription model around a fig tree that outlives your grandchildren. The Hebrews encoded this knowledge into law and scripture precisely because knowledge that makes you self-sufficient is worth protecting across generations. The industry did not suppress it. They simply stopped teaching it and waited for the generation that knew it to die. That generation is gone, but the plants are still here. The timing of this knowledge could not be more critical. Global antibiotic resistance is accelerating. The WHO lists it as one of the greatest threats to human health on Earth. The pipeline of new antibiotics is nearly empty. Meanwhile, carhavicrol and thymol from hyssop, allicin from garlic, oleuropein from olive leaf are destroying bacterial cell membranes through mechanisms bacteria have shown almost no ability to resist. Because these are not single-target compounds. They are complex, multi-mechanism molecules that bacteria cannot simply mutate around. Chronic disease, heart disease, diabetes, and cancer is now the leading cause of death globally. 3 conditions the 7 species target directly, biochemically, documentable. The ancient Hebrews did not build their medicine for a world without crisis. They built it precisely for one. That world is here. And the garden is still waiting. You do not need a farm. You need 7 decisions. The fig: eat 3 fresh figs every morning for digestion. For infected wounds or boils, split a fresh fig and press the white latex side directly onto the affected area. The ficin enzyme works within hours. Grow it in a pot that thrives in heat and needs almost no water. The olive: stop buying refined olive oil and start sourcing olive leaf extract. The leaf contains up to 14% oleuropein, and the oil contains trace amounts. Brew dried olive leaves as a daily tea for blood pressure. If you have a diabetic family member, this is the conversation to have with their physician today. The pomegranate and date: consume them together. Half a glass of cold-pressed pomegranate juice and 3 dates every morning. The Technion research is specific. The synergy only works when both are consumed simultaneously. Do this for 90 days and request a lipid panel from your doctor. Let the numbers speak. The grapevine: eat red grapes with the seeds. Chew them. The oligomeric proanthocyanins are concentrated in the seed. Resveratrol is heat-sensitive and fresh is always superior to cooked or processed. Barley, whole barley, not pearl barley. The beta-glucans are in the outer layer that pearling strips away. Cook it like rice and eat it before your highest carbohydrate meal of the day. It will flatten your blood sugar spike more effectively than most over-the-counter glycemic supplements. Wheat, whole grain only. Not whole wheat flour, whole grain wheat, minimally processed. The difference between whole grain and white flour is not cosmetic. It is the difference between a medicine and an empty calorie. For the auxiliary plants, crush garlic, wait 10 minutes, and eat it raw. That 10-minute window is non-negotiable. It allows the enzyme alliinase to fully convert allicin into allicin. Cooking destroys it completely. One raw crushed clove daily lowers blood pressure, reduces LDL, and delivers broad-spectrum antimicrobial protection no supplement has fully replicated. Brew hyssop as a tea. At the first sign of respiratory infection, the carvacrol it releases in hot water is the same compound now being studied as an antibiotic alternative. Take half a teaspoon of cold-pressed black cumin oil daily. The thymoquinone content is highest unheated, and current peer-reviewed oncology research is actively investigating its ability to trigger cancer cell death while leaving healthy cells intact. Start with one plant this week, the one that targets your most pressing health concern. Begin there, then teach someone else. The pharmaceutical industry does not want you to know that the most cardiovascularly protective compound ever measured in a clinical trial grows on a tree that lives 5 centuries and asks nothing of you. The processed food industry does not want you to know that the grain they stripped of its medicine and sold back to you as white flour was already a complete therapeutic system before they touched it. The regulatory system does not want you to know that calling a fig a drug is the only legal barrier standing between you and 3,000 years of documented medicine. But here is what none of them can change. These plants predate every pharmaceutical company on Earth. They predate every regulatory agency. They predate every processed food manufacturer by thousands of years. They fed empires. They healed kings. They kept an entire civilization intact across 35 centuries of persecution, and they are still producing the same compounds, in the same concentrations, with the same precision they always have. The knowledge survived because people refused to let it die. That is exactly what Nature Heals exists to do. Every video on this channel is a recovered record of ancient remedies, ancient foods, ancient wisdom that modern science is now validating one study at a time. We do not speculate. We trace. From the Talmud to the clinical trial. From the Hebrew garden to the peer-reviewed journal. From what they knew then to what your body needs now. If this video gave you something like a name, a mechanism, a reason to walk past the pharmacy and into your kitchen instead, then this channel was built for you. Subscribe to Nature Heals. Hit the bell so you never miss a discovery. And share this video with one person who deserves to know what was taken from them. The ancient world left us a pharmacy. It is still open, and we are just getting started.